Welcome to Been on Our Mind, and this is another episode with a friend of mine. His name is Josh Coleman, and I'm really excited to have him here in this space with me today because we have some juicy conversations. But I'm going to allow him to introduce himself and let him know who he is to y'all.
Oh, I am just a boy. My name is Josh Coleman, and look, I'm a person who's been going through my own growth, healing, and evolution in as conscious a way as possible for the last decade. And some of those things were very successful and beautiful and picturesque story-like, and other ones have just been terrible. And I've fallen on the floor, and I've rubbed my face across the carpet of the universe, and it's been really difficult. So I see both aspects of who I am in that. I feel like a complex being. I don't feel like a simple person. What I mean to say by that is that I have good and negative aspects of who I am, and I'm always working with my mind and with my heart to organize those aspects so that I'm as healthy as I can be. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And how would you describe that you do that for people? Because I do know that you have a professional kind of self as well, in which you weave that into your practice.
Yeah, I do that with people because if you know your own darkness, it's a lot easier to see other people's darkness without judgment. So the more I can say that I've gone into my own, wounds and dark spots and blind spots and all that kind of stuff, the easier it is then to hold space for other people. I can't really think of much that a person could come up to me with and say, and then I'd be like, oh, I am so outrageously offended on a soul level that I will not listen to you any further. It doesn't really work like that for me because in my practice, I first discovered when I was in my early 20s, I'm almost 40 now. When I was in my early 20s, I discovered, let's call it the light, meaning that I'd experienced a connection to the universe that was beyond body and mind, and that felt like it was intrinsic to my soul. Then I got to experience the dark, which is the collective pain and personal pain and soulful journey that I've gone on, and I've had to go into a deep dive in order to understand that darkness. I would have preferred not to be honest. Like, it would have been great to be like, here's the universe and I'm a part of it, and it ends right there. That was actually the beginning of a very intense journey that, of course, I'm still on. But just through that recognition of light, so knowing myself to be connected to God, dare I say, or connected to the universe, and sharing that connection with other people, but also to recognize that to be here on earth is to be in darkness, is to have inherited collective pain, and to have had, again, my own personal journey as a soul that most likely has had complexities and pain. And holding those two things at the same time, perfection, brilliance, love, connection, and darkness, mental health issues, emotional deficiencies and blind spots. Being able to hold both of those things at the same time, I feel, allow me to feel whole, allow me to understand wholeness within myself, and then being able to extend that to other people comes more naturally. If I didn't do one part of those two, then it won't work. So it requires both the light and the dark in order for that to be able to be transmitted and hold space for others.
Thank you for sharing that. I deeply resonate with what you're sharing, and I'm just really excited to have you here with me today so we can unpack some things. So I'm going to start with the first question that I ask all of my guests that I bring on here. And it is, what has been on your mind?
My mind lately, I don't know if you saw the old mega thread on Facebook recently.
No, I haven't.
Well, I made a post that said, to my vaccinated friends, I love you. To my unvaccinated friends, I love you. And I'm sure you can imagine that it ended up being quite a lot of perspectives, and what I was very, very thankful for. A lot of people laid down their perspectives on both sides of that aisle And we're able to discuss things in a little bit of a looser way than normal, which was really exciting. But the thing that's on my mind right now is that we need to be very, very careful to not divide ourselves into 2 or 3 parts. In order to move forward collectively, we're going to need to understand one another and just be careful not to demonize the other side of this equation. It's easy enough for the pro side to demonize the anti, because a lot of the anti is coming from, trying to think of like a respectful way to put this, but there's sickness in the anti and there's sickness in the pro, in my opinion. I'm looking at it in a very as clear as I can be. I see truth and sickness in both sides. It's easier for the pro side to be like, fuck, these people don't care about health and they don't care about elderly people and everything like that. So it's really easy to say, fuck the anti side. I also noticed that the anti side has a thing around the pro side too, which is if you're a round vaccinated person, you yourself might get hurt or something like that. I think that's all just a bit silly. I think that's where things turn into delusion. And so it's really interesting to sit with both sides of the debate and see the truth. There's truth very much, for example, in needing to be careful and protect members of our society. I think it would be crazy not to do that. There's also truth to say that historically, people in a position of power when it comes to medical power in particular have abused that.
Yeah.
And so there is, especially in America, I'm going to just say it straight, it's actually an American problem. And unfortunately, the rest of the world is so intertwined into America that we can't get away. If it was just the Canadian or the Australian government, I don't think we'd actually have as many of the issues because we are generally socialist countries.
Yeah.
But because America, the United States, has unfettered capitalism, they have abused positions of power, especially medically, for a long time. And so if you were to see the truth in the anti-side, you could say, well, just wait now. It is true. We shouldn't just give blind trust to the government and blind trust to pharmaceutical companies. It doesn't seem fair either. But that's the truth of both sides. The truth is we need to protect our community. That's coming from the pro. And the truth on the anti is, okay, let's just be careful here. Like, not that people shouldn't get the vaccine, but let's just at least check it out before we just run into the shop.
Yeah.
But then the sickness on both sides, there's a sickness from the pro side I'm feeling and I'm seeing, where the idea is that, like, if you don't, then we will. And just, there is truth to that, but also there's a sickness, because then you're saying to somebody, hey, even if you haven't made up your mind, you need to make up your mind or you're a fucking piece of shit. I just think it's really important to be careful with that.
Yeah.
But then on the anti-side, again, there's a lot of sickness, because it's kind of like a parent-child thing where if you don't like your mom and dad, you're like, you can't control me, mom. You can't control me, dad. And so there is this sickness that I can see in the anti-side as well. And so, the truth and the sickness that can be seen in both sides seems really strong to me, but neither side can see that. Neither side can only see their own side and can only pit the other side as the devil, whereas we are the angels. And it's very interesting, because that's a function of mind and a function of consciousness that's been happening forever. In fact, we live in a shame-based society. Almost all of the origins, for example, even our justice system, it's not really about the other person who's been a perpetrator healing. It's more about, let's make sure they get hurt just as much as they've hurt others. That seems to be the main, traditionally anyway, the drive towards justice in our world is, let's make sure that the person who has hurt someone else hurts enough so that the victim feels good about it. That in itself is a shame-based society. And so things like these contentious issues, like the vaccine, when it comes up, we still default to shame-based politics. We still default to shaming the other person. And unfortunately, I don't think as in our history, we even really know what it looks like to not have that. You know, I do know that there are indigenous cultures and tribes that have had way better versions of justice. Other than that, if you look back for thousands of years now, we haven't really seen anything else. So it is a hard thing. How do you implement transformational justice, or a justice that includes the evolution of both parties, for example? How do you include that if you've never seen a model of it? And how do we, as bumbling human beings, create a new model of this without fucking it up with our own personal problems? So we're in a tough spot as a society, where the ways that have been don't really work, and the ways that could be haven't been developed yet. So it's a strange place to be. It's a strange place to be. We're neither here nor there. That's a good sign, though. You know, if you look at your own life, if you've ever felt that, you don't know where I'm at. Usually that means we start to go to where we evolve to the next place.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what's happening culturally as well. It's never very pretty when we're in the middle of it.
Well, no, because we're in the chrysalis, we're in the goo phase, right? As you're speaking, one of the thoughts that was coming into my mind was how it's very fear-based on either side, almost essentially, and which then causes that divide because it needs to stop. But
and fear does play off itself. So if you've got two people that are in fear, and let's take it out of anything political. Just imagine two people that are standing in the same room fearful. Eventually they start to become fearful of each other. And eventually that fear will manifest as conflict, and will start to drive people further away. And that's just roommates. And we're talking about a global situation.
And we're seeing a lot of that, right? And there's so much fear, and it's such a difficult thing. Like I was saying before we started this conversation, recording it, I was having a conversation this morning with my neighbor about all of this stuff. And it is very present collectively that there is very much divide. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but it'll come back. I have faith.
Yeah, it happens. But the divide is real. And
yes. The fear. So because with the lockdowns and all of these things, since the beginning of the pandemic, there's been so much fear that has been instilled within us on a collective level from you got to stay away. You're 6 meters away from each other. It's all precautionary, but at the same time, it's very fear-based, where I was walking down the way and these people, they move away from you because they're terrified. And I've noticed that within myself too. And it's what is navigating me? Because is fear my truth? To me, it's not. To me, my truth is way higher than that, and it is way above that. But the fear is very present, and it is a survival mechanism.
Just very quickly, it's funny where I also have noticed that, and especially in the grocery stores here as the lockdown started, people looked very scared of each other, and they really wanted to make sure and get their toilet paper first. And that was just 2 months ago. It happened again. And that was really enlightening to see that after a year of it happening, it was still happening like that. The fear was still so strong. I also want to say that I also have been having to stay away from each other is a bit weird. But then also I've noticed people that are more strongly on the anti kind of want to go and throw that in people's faces by getting too close. Kind of I'll show you. I'll show you. I have a healthy immune system, so that in itself is a response to fear still, because they're trying to prove something, to say you're in fear. Well, I'm going to go and poke on your fear. I'm going to show you. But I feel again, it's just a shame, because all of the responses to fear, even if they don't look like they are, they're still fear, and it's just a bummer, because respect for actually, this is what my brother said. He was like, you know what? I'm not really scared of this virus, but I love that people are out of my space.
Honestly, me too. And there's part of me that loves the masks, because I'm just nobody can see me right now. I'm incognito and all these things. But also I feel deeply, and I felt this since the beginning. As soon as I heard the word COVID, it was as if I got this download from the universe being this is meant to happen. This is pre-programmed. This is supposed to be here right now. And this is a time for us to learn what our personal space is and how we can respect that space of others and each other. Like, if we were to see that in its full totality. And like, I know that I see things from a very like spiritual perspective because that's just how I am. But yeah.
There's the amazing consent training when you think about it.
100%.
This is the whole thing about consent is not getting in people's space without asking, right? So now we have a very good reason to be asking too. If I'm saying to somebody, hey, would you prefer social distance? Then that is itself saying, hey, I respect what your desires are in the situation, even if it is a fear. There's no reason to go poking bears, right? So, But then on the same side, I just want to say one more time that I've had. I'm not vaccinated yet. I'm not. I'm going to take a peek over the next few cycles, maybe over 6 to 8 months, and then I'm going to make a decision. Most likely, I'll have to for travel anyway. Yeah, you know, like that. Because I'm not anti anything. I'm just curious and taking my time. But I did have a couple people have a go at me to be like, again, with that fear and with that pain, like, you're not vaccinated yet. Well, you would better. And if you don't, like, and it's been kind of cool to kind of be with that too and be like, okay, like, I see what you're saying. I see that you're feeling that fear. But again, as a person who does respect people's space, even if I'm vaccinated or not, I'm not going to be breathing in people's mouths because that's not what's being asked of me or of us in this time too. So just remembering, I think that that respect that can be gained through this social distancing program might actually be helpful for this pandemic. It might actually be helpful in the future for us to have better communication around space and better communication around how close we want people. Yeah. That could be the positive part. Could be a big time positive part. Yeah.
I think so. I think it very much could be like, even for myself, like I've noticed a lot more people just being like, can I give you a hug? And like before I used to be so like, I would just give hugs all the time, like to everybody. But then I went through some trauma that made me not as open and willing to give hugs. And then I was at a space where it was like people would give me hugs without consent. And then COVID happened. And now it's like naturally people are just being like, hey, is it okay if I hug you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, thank you so much for asking. So there is some kind of like awareness shift happening within that on that other level, which is really cool to see. But yeah, there's still very much a lot of divide and.
Yeah, there is still a lot of divide, but I want to remind myself and others that if it wasn't about this, it'd probably be about something else.
Yes, 100%.
Still, as a humanity, we are generally divided. The minute something comes up that could divide us, we jump on it really quickly because it fulfills a part of our need for drama as well. It fulfills a part of our need we need someone to hate and we need someone to love, you know, like, and if you actually look psychologically, that is a phase in childhood development that runs roughly, please don't quote me exact, but roughly between 4 and 6 years old. Okay. We're looking for heroes and we're looking for villains. And you'll notice that a lot of, you know, when you watch Disney movies and stuff, there's always heroes and villains. And this is actually trying to scratch a psychological itch that we have at a certain point of our psychological development where we need heroes and we need villains. Because we are also a traumatized society, most of our inner children are whack. Most of our inner children have wounds and have issues that are hard to get over. And what happens is psychologically, when that trauma and when those issues take hold, it's possible to get stuck in cycles of development and not fulfill those cycles of development. And I would say that largely what we see in the world is like, and a lot of the stuff around being good and not being bad and all that stuff, you know, that's all stuff that is childhood psychology. And if we have trauma there or something that's unfulfilled, it will keep manifesting. And I think that this is a good example, but there are many, many examples. Even the way that we look at policemen are the good guys. I know you don't, I don't, but policemen are the good guys. Politicians are the good guys, and criminals and drug users are the bad guys. All of those things are all mythological framework that is set up to scratch that childhood development itch of the good versus evil. I think that's my theory on the whole thing. Is that because many of us are traumatized in our childhood. We're still trying to find love from mama and dada where it doesn't exist, and all those things too. Like there's a huge psychological thing going on, and that may just be the case forever. Or I know people that finally get to the root of these things and are able to heal, and then are able to move out of some of those frames of thinking and become more what's called multidimensional. So it's not thinking good versus evil only, and it's not thinking high versus low and good. It's the idea that things are so incomprehensibly, you can't just say this is good, this is bad. Now, of course, there's all this stuff. People shouldn't be raping, murdering, stealing. All the good biblical lines, those are the things that we shouldn't be doing to each other. Or rather, if we do, there will be consequences. But the psychological framework of seeing everything as good and evil and not being able to see shades of gray and the complexities of life, this is something I do believe is a collective issue. And it's an issue for me. I'm not just talking about the world right now. I'm saying I know my own psychological issues. and I can easily fall into those thought patterns and loops.
You're making me think of the nervous system and with that too. And like, I'm not sure why that's coming forward, but just like,
because a relaxed nervous system can see and feel so many things. A tight and rigid and a traumatized nervous system literally has to think in heroes and demons, and we have to think in ways to protect ourselves against bad people. And there has been so many fucking bad people and so much bad behavior and pain that's through our society that no wonder, of course, we're stuck in these things.
Yeah. And it's like that has become the familiar because it has been all that we've known for such a long time. And just like Eckhart Tolle says, like, our pain body needs that pain, essentially. So we're like constantly looking to feed ourselves with that. And so that's probably where all this fear comes from, in order for us to be survivalists. But at the same time, it's time for us. I speak from a personal perspective because I can't speak for other people, but I feel within myself that it's time for me to evolve. And I think others are on that train too.
I think so as well. And time will tell. Like if in 30, 40 years, people are evolving and the children are evolving by proxy, we'll see a whole new world. And I know that you and I both have studied that is what is to be.
Yeah.
And also, I'm careful like you as well, though, because I used to be like, cool, we're all evolving now. You're going to evolve. You're going to evolve. People are going, fuck you, you don't even know me. So I've had to learn not to project onto the world or onto others, while at the same time maintaining in my heart that I know I'm evolving. I know that I'm continually questioning my motivations, accepting darkness without indulging it, all that kind of stuff. I'm going through that process. Why wouldn't other people be? Yeah.
There's definitely plenty of us that are there, but there are definitely still people that are not. And like, I noticed that today as I went to the grocery store, and I just like people watched and just kind of, I'm in a very vulnerable state today. And I've gone through, I would say like a full 360 today, where it was like, I went to the depths of myself and then I came right back up. Like it was quite the journey.
Doing the podcast at all on a day like that.
I know, it was so funny. I laughed to myself because like we rescheduled from last week and I was feeling burnt out and tired, and then also sensing some resistance to even wanting to have this conversation, which was interesting. And then to have the podcast show up today when I've been in a deep grief and then went through that cycle within a full 24 hours. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And I'm still coming on.
If you had rescheduled, it would have been okay. But it's funny.
I know.
I'm always in your role. And if I have rescheduled on someone, especially twice, that third time, I'm always like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm just like, literally, just like fire behind me and shit. I'm just like, this is fine.
I felt like this conversation is timely, though. Like it needs to happen, and we need to keep having these. We need to bring forward the realities of trauma and grief and division and things like that. Like, even if we're fucking feeling like we're in the dumps, like, you know, like, because life is a complexity. It is a multitude of all of everything. So like, I can like, what's the point of avoiding like these conversations that I want to have, you know, like it's just, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and there's also fear. I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about myself. There's fear when talking about anything controversial that is going to hurt me. Actually, it's cool. So yeah, I made a post on Facebook and it blew up. There was hundreds of comments, and it was really neat. It was the first time in my life that, knowing that it was offending people, that I was speaking about a subject, and again, I wasn't taking an anti stance. I was just saying, I'm just haven't chosen yet. And just knowing that would make some people be like, cool, Josh isn't my friend anymore. Being okay with it for probably the first time in my whole life. Like, you knew me from back in the day, but Halifax is such a small city. It's so easy to get into those micro politics. It's so easy to want not to lose one friend, because one friend is pretty much every friend if you're in a small place like that. That I've spent a lot of time in social fear, that if I were to say something, and being a bit of a loud talker and a bit of a weird guy, I've had a lot of fear. But this is the first time that I was like, I am losing friends right now, and that's okay. And if we're meant to be friends, we'll be friends later. I'm not worried about that just right now. And along with that is that recently I've been going to therapy and rooting out stuff in my solar plexus. So finding trauma and actually literally doing like full cries and like really getting into pain in that area. I went to a woman who does massage, and it was an energy work session as well. She wasn't fucking around. It wasn't light and gentle. She got into here with her this, and then just pushed and pushed for probably about 15 minutes, and it was so painful. And then there's no pain there right now, as there typically would be. So I've also been kind of getting into a place in myself where I'm okay with things going wrong. I'm okay with not being seen the way that I'm trying to intend and all that kind of stuff more than ever. I'll never fully, I don't think, be like, I don't care all what people think, because that would be sociopathic as well. But it was really cool to be able to speak controversially, to host a conversation where people were being very mean to each other in ways that I would never condone. But then just at the end, just be like, this is everyone's process, and I'm okay with that. And I don't have to be anything in particular. I'll just be whatever I am. That's new for me. That's brand new.
And and that's what we have to do. That's right. Like, there's that sense of surrender to it. And like, for me, at least, as you're speaking, like, because, and it's funny that you bring that up about like you're losing friends, because that also came up in my conversation earlier today. It was like how I personally think that that's not okay. That like, I am double vaxxed. I did it because I wanted to go to festivals safely. But even now it's like, I'm unsure of that. Well, I'm not unsure of that choice for myself, but at the same time, like, this science is proving different than what we had thought and hoped for, essentially, is what I'm seeing. And
I just want to say also, from a person who's not vaxxed to a person who's vaxxed, thank you.
But see, like, I'm like you, where I don't have that animosity to people, towards others, and it's like, it's your personal choice, and it should not be forced upon you, and it should be a personal decision to take an experimental vaccination, like, because that is what it is. Let's call it out, because that's the truth. And
what I was always saying as well is, like, give it to everyone who wants it. My God.
Yeah.
All medicine should be free to every person, and the choice as to what we decide to work with is our own. But for anyone who wants anything, like, not even just this vaccine, any vaccine, I think we should live in a world where it's all free and it's all available, and there is informed consent as well. So yes, it is experimental, and the truth is as well, we'll find out. It won't take long to find.
Yeah.
We'll find out any problems there are. We'll find out any benefits there are. It could be that it's more beneficial than we even know, and we're going to find that. Like we just don't know.
We don't know. What I don't appreciate is the segregation that I have been seeing from governmental bodies and things like that. That's something that is not okay. I do not agree with it. I've seen people speak out about them losing their jobs and therefore their homes. And to me, that just makes me go, well, aren't you guys being contradictory now? Like, are you actually caring about the person? Because you don't really seem like you are.
The abortion debates. It's the same thing as the debates, right? It's like, I care about you.
Yeah.
Unless you're born, and then we don't give a fuck about you. It's the same kind of thing, right? It's all about those little hypocrisies.
It makes no sense. And like, unfortunately, there's the country to the south of me and to the north of you in some way, the United States, who very much has that capitalistic mental, not mental health, sorry, but yeah, that too. But capitalistic mentality, but also healthcare system where it's like you're putting a price tag on somebody's lives. Like it just doesn't make sense for me. But that's a whole like system that we can't change in this conversation, unfortunately. But yeah, what we can do is.
But seeing the segregation, seeing the real thing. And I have a number of friends who are nurses and very much pro-vax. Okay. They were saying, don't make these vaccination cards, please. So in other words, like even people that are nurses who are administering the vaccines are still saying, hey, but be careful. Let's not make a social hierarchy here.
Yeah, because that's wrong, because that's everything that we're trying to move away from. We've had enough segregation in this world.
Certainly everything that the Western world has been yelling about for an awful long time. Like that's the idea. And denying actually some things that probably would be lots of things that would be helpful about socialism because of this idea of freedom. So if that's the case, it seems strange for such a fast turn to happen. What takes 1 year and the whole thing's changed now?
It's wild. Like, I don't even know where we're going, but I'm just holding hope and faith that we're going in a positive direction, hopefully.
Even again, the worst case scenarios, I don't think are as bad as we think they are. Let's make sure even in everything's going to be fine.
Oh yeah. It will be. It will be. One thing that COVID, since we're on the topic, has brought forward for me a lot is my trauma. It has made me sit in my darkness and also reach towards my light. And I know that that's something that you very much work with. And I'm curious, what has inspired you to walk that path? Because as we've both mentioned, that it's not everybody's path to be heightenedly aware right now.
Well, I started this path in 2007 as well. And so that's that was a time when YouTube didn't even really exist the way it does. And people weren't talking about spiritual stuff online almost at all. There was groups of people that I was a part of, different New Age groups and stuff, and different meditation groups and Buddhist groups and stuff like that. But they were very much their own disconnected pods. And so actually coming out as a person who feels that spiritual connection, I lost heaps of my friends at the time. Like it was an entirely different cultural landscape in the 2000s. And I was kind of what do you call it? I'm not sure what the word is. Actually, the word is chauvinist, but chauvinist now means male stuff, but it actually chauvinist means to show off. You like when I first experienced God, I was like, whoa, I experienced God. You're going to be able to do it. Everyone should. There's millions. Woo! But it did put a lot of my friends off, and it wasn't the social landscape. Whereas now it seems like most conversations are a go, especially regarding spirituality and especially regarding paranormal and all the kind of stuff. It seems like it's fairly commonplace conversation, more than it was back then. So starting the path was a bit rough. I mean, the first year, I had a number of friends say that I needed to go to a mental institution because I was experiencing psychosis. And the truth was, I was experiencing a bit of psychosis. You know, when the floodgates open, when the doors open to consciousness, sometimes it comes real fast. And when it does come real fast, if you're not prepared and if the people around you aren't prepared, it can be a very jolting experience. That is how my whole path started. Was quite early. I had the Kundalini awakening when I was 21, so or 22 maybe, but it was like for about 2 weeks, my body felt like an orgasm. And there's no way that I could, because it lasted for so long, there's no way I could have written it off as a one-off or just like a thing that wasn't real. Because anything soulful, anything that involves the paranormal, it's easy for it to happen and then you just write it off as not happening. It's just easier. It's like, I don't want to have to deal with more, but it was so long standing, this 2 week period. And whenever I had a thought, I'd be like, I wonder. And as I wondered, something else would complete the question and give me the answer all in one moment, like one flash, if that makes sense. So that's how I started to experiment with intuition. So it was really big time. And again, at first it was so beautiful, and then it got very dark and really crazy. And when I looked into my own past lives in different power structures within church and within societies and stuff like that, it actually really freaked me the fuck out. It was like, I didn't want to see those things. They just started happening to me. But as the door opened, it couldn't be closed. Maybe that's the way to put it. As I opened the door to my own psyche and to my soul and to the spiritual truth, I couldn't close it afterwards. So even when I tried to close it a number of times, I literally couldn't. And so I was forced to keep walking the path. I would love to say it was a hero's journey where the whole time I was down. It was not the case. I was drugged a number of times through the process.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's what needs to happen, right? Like life throws us through the ringer and it wakes us up whether we want it to or not, which was definitely one of the experiences that I had today. And like,
it makes me want to give you a hug whenever you talk about today, even though I have to ask first.
Yeah. I would say yes. However, you're quite far, a continent or two away from us. So
I'd say almost diametrically opposite. Being in Australia and Nova Scotia and East Coast Canada, you're in Ontario, but still, we're pretty much exactly opposite sides of the world.
No way! That's so cool. Yeah. Oh, I love that thought. We're just like two, like on the axis, spinning around in the space rock.
Poles, that's what poles are good for, because when I speak of polarization, it's often negative. But poles mean that we're on different poles. We're different poles. That's a good thing. If we could honor, instead of thinking of polarization as division, if we thought of it as diversity, I have a feeling that we'd be able to use our own experiences with each other to create a bigger picture, a more complete picture of the world. So hopefully that's again where we're heading. Fuck, if it isn't, I'm in the wrong place.
It's like we've been stuck on a black and white thinking for so long. We're like, and it's time to take them together and allow the light to penetrate the darkness to bring forth the color, because we need the fucking rainbow. We need the diversity. We need we need that. We need it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, I hope that we'll find that over time.
Well,
we'll start with each individual person, complexifying, moving out of moving out of black and white or Boolean thinking and moving into multidimensional or complex thinking. And then if our children see us thinking that way from multiple perspectives, they'll understand that's possible, and then they'll be able to move. That's kind of probably the only. Like, you're not going to be able to go up to a person who's lived their whole life in division and pain and be like, all you have to do is not be that.
God, no. Because you're at that point, you're literally asking them to face all of their trauma. And they might not be ready to open that floodgate.
There's actually a whole thing. I teach meditation classes. There's actually a whole thing where, because we live in a whitewashed culture, people talk about meditation. They say, "Oh, you should meditate. You'll feel more calm. You'll feel more at peace. And it's like, not really. Like, meditation is actually the process of facing one's demons. And you might open a door through meditation, again, like I did, that you can't close, and that you have to then you're forced to deal with things that might take years, or decades even, like anything is possible. Just it's cute. Everything that we present in here is like, again, like, you should meditate. It'll be really cool. And I'm like, well, maybe it will be, or maybe it'll be fucked and like soul destroying. Who knows? But I think that because we live in a place where people want to sell, you don't want to sell that. It's hard to sell that. It's hard to sell. You're going to have to go through a reckoning within your own soul. It's easier to say you're going to be calm.
Yeah. It's so true. And as a yoga instructor, I've actually had somebody bring forward that perspective to me too once before. Like, I was going through a tough time, and it was with an old boss, and they said to me, they're like, well, you're a yoga teacher. Isn't that supposed to make you all love and light and like all like, flexible and like able to like, deal with the thing? And I looked at them and I'm like, excuse me? Like, you do not realize that yoga actually makes you face the depths of your pain. And that is very much why we cannot do this work alone. That is why we teach people how to slow down and put on certain brakes, and why we're meant to live in a community. And yeah, like, we live in a world of duality. We do. And there is pain. And there's pain that we don't even know that is there from our childhood or past lives or collectively, right? And it's like, yeah, like, these tools are great and all, but yeah, it's not just rainbows. The rainbow is made of the dark and the light.
And every other culture before this at least had temples that you could go to deal with these issues as they arise. We really, really don't. So the temple could be considered the mental hospital. And like, a good friend of mine just went through that whole process and had to go on and off heavy antipsychotics, and the process that it did to his body and his mind and everything. It was really, really hard. He's great now, though. So I love that. It's nice that there's a redeeming story, like, it's nice to see stories where people go through the darkness and pain and come out the other end. That's a plus.
Well, most definitely. And that's ideal. That's what we want for people to be able to do, right? So, yeah. But it's not for everybody. It's not.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. I'm trying to pitch that it is. We're trying to push ideologies, or almost like religiously trying to push meditation and yoga and stuff is a very bad idea.
Yeah, because it's not a Band-Aid. It's not an end-all, fix-all. It's literally.
And in these actual traditions, they would not have been advertising that way as well. The idea was that you had your crew, you had your system, you had your tradition, and people came to it or sought after it. Very different world where we're trying to hawk ourselves like car salesmen for anything to do with anything, let alone spirituality. But just the whole system it's very different. It's not about creating something of value and then have people attracted to that. Maybe it is, but oftentimes in our culture, it's more like, why don't you try to make people think something has value? Why don't we try and put something as though it has value and hope it works out? If we get a good cut of that paycheck and then it fails, but we already got it taken care of. So no, that's like, unfortunately, a large part of the particular type of capitalism that we're living in right now. Fuck the systems.
Yeah, I agree with you. For those of you listening, I am very, I don't know. I feel like I'm a cynical bitch these days, but not really. Oh God.
To be realistic. It's important to be realistic, right?
It really is.
You got a cut on your arm, and you were like, I don't have a cut on my arm. And kept on walking around the world and recutting it and not bandaging it. Eventually it become a problem. So sometimes it's more realistic to say, I've got a cut on my arm and it needs to heal, and I'm going to do what I need to do to make that heal.
And we have to call it out, especially right now, because things are getting out of control. Like, the capitalist system is not working. like you can't capitalize spirituality. I'm sorry, but you fucking can't. Like it just doesn't work that way. I understand that we are all worthy of our proper energy exchange. I respect that. And I do believe that if you are doing personal one-on-one work with people, like, yes, there should be a form of energy exchange.
Like a therapist.
Yes.
Category. Yeah.
Exactly.
When you start to ask for thousands and thousands of dollars for a small course or that kind of stuff, it can start to turn into Joel Osteen, which is the Christian preacher who makes millions of dollars off of people because he says, if you give me money, God will love you more. Be careful of that.
Like, no, stop capitalizing off of people because in some form it's human trafficking and it's not okay. And
that's another problem again. We know that that's true, but we don't have new systems in place. So it's kind of like, you need to pay my water bill.
Right? Right. And like, but then not only that, like I saw today, I learned that New Brunswick doesn't have a law that stops landlords from increasing rent.
Is that the one that went to 1,800?
Yeah, my friend posted that. It went from 800 to 1,800. How is that even legal? How is that ethical? How is that humane on any level? Who in their right mind even thought that that was okay? Because that is not okay. We are in a global pandemic. We are in an opioid crisis. We are in a homelessness crisis, and we are running out of affordable housing for people. But yet capitalism continues to capitalize on people's lives and is not allowing them a fucking place to live. And now people can't even buy food and they're also fucking losing their goddamn jobs because they're not getting a goddamn vaccine. Like, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, but I am clearly fired up right now. And
it's also, and we're going to pay for it too, is the thing. We will pay for it as a society. If you put people into a position on a back foot so strongly, we'll pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the thing people don't understand, is that if you put people on a back foot, they're going to have to find some way to get back. And oftentimes it's through something that means that probably isn't the way that we should be doing it, But more people are literally homeless, and then the cops come and round them all up, like they just did recently
in Halifax. Yeah, and we've also seen that in Toronto, like last month too. Like,
did you?
Yeah, and it's madness. That's also part of the divide too, right? And that's like the divide between those classes of the political higher up class and then the lower class that is literally struggling to survive. And they're on real fear. That's like legit.
The middle class is pretty much just the lower class repackaged as well, because it's entirely off of debt.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, you might have a good life, but you owe your whole life to the bank in order to, and you have to keep on pushing for it, right? Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are the stories that I carry in my head all the time. I'm like, why? I'm walking in rage and grief. Great, awesome. Reach for love. Oh my God, tree.
But you should feel that way, honey. This is just, that goes to show that you have empathy and that is open, because this is the challenge of our time. Oh, yeah. I'm curious to see, like, this is now a record that we're making, right? This is a record. Let's look back at this 50 years from now and let's see what happens.
I really hope that all debt is eradicated, and like literally all debt on this planet should not exist. That every single person alive has a place to live, accessible water, and accessible food, and also clothing, because those are our basic needs. And
it's funny because that's like you saying, like, yeah, I just want the smallest, basicest thing for people to make sure that they're alive. It's not even.
And what really bothers me is that none of this. Well, it had existed in Europe and everything like that, but none of it existed before Europeans came over to Turtle Island. And Indigenous communities, whom are very much still screaming for their lives to be recognized, have been dealing with this for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived on this land freely. And then these folks came over from across the way, and they just decided, we're going to put a price tag on everybody's life. And that price tag has very much like drastically, incrementally increased, especially within the last 20 years. And it's very unbalanced. And I'm noticing that as humans, which is another reason why I feel like COVID is here as a teacher, is that like we are living out of balance as a species on this planet. So much.
Just going through my mind, I was like, what areas weren't touched by that? And I'm like, almost none, really.
Yeah.
Because Spanish went and took over South and Central America. England and France went and fought over Canada. England went and just took Australia, New Zealand. Yeah, like the whole world, I guess, except for Asia and Russia. And they have, in China at least, they have their own problems to deal with. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, you're right. It was the European folks went and took the entire world.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Some of my ancestors.
Africa, India, everywhere. Yeah, I literally can't think of a place that the Europeans can go and take.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was only 5 people ago within our own family lines, right? Like it's not that long.
No, it's not.
Well, maybe 10 if we're going old style.
Yeah.
Systems, but still not that many people ago. It's 10 is all in the scheme of things.
Right? Like, yeah, it's baffling. And I keep hoping that things are going to change. And I know that like I have a lot of hope and faith because of people like myself and yourself and friends that I know that you have and I have. And like, there are a lot of people that are very aware that are actively working towards making these changes. But then we still have the system that's like really trying to like hold on to its archaic ways of keeping that control over others. And yeah, and we must have to wrap up soon. What time is it? Almost,
it's coming up.
Yeah.
Up to 11. Not 11 for you, but yeah. Yeah, it sucks to end on such a cynical note, but I think it's also important that, again, if there is wounding, you have to look at it directly. If you don't look at it directly, it'll continue to fester. So I think it's important, yes. But I love that this whole thing was about the divide politically around the coronavirus, and then you were able to tie it into the fact that the world was already divided before this, and that's why it was so easy for these same mentalities to continue on too, right?
Yeah, and now we're just seeing them like very brightly, essentially, like it's in our face, and we have nowhere to turn. Basically, I don't want to leave on a completely cynical note. Come on now. So I'm going to ask you another question, which is something that I always ask my guests. And it is, what does joy mean to you?
Joy has been synonymous with fulfillment for me. So when something is fulfilled, be it a soulful contract or evolution, or be it even a desire, or be it, like I said, at first an evolution or a change of some kind, I think I would associate joy with fulfillment.
Cool. I like that. Sweet.
And to end it on one more bright note. People are changing.
Yes.
It might even be that people are kind of forced to change just because of the atmosphere of the cosmos. I don't know. I do know that many, many people are going through changes. Many people are constantly allowing themselves to grow, and we will see a better world through it all. We will.
Almost definitely.
A part of it is acknowledging, a huge part of it is acknowledging the deeds that have been wrong. And for myself, again, I said a word earlier. I said acknowledging darkness without indulging it. Because to be able to accept darkness is very important. But to indulge darkness is kind of the worst thing you can do. It's a weird fine line. It's like a razor's edge just standing there. How can I accept something without indulging it? And if we can learn how to accept something without indulging it, we're able to then do what shadow work, like the work.
How would you do that then in like 5 words or less?
It is, and it is personal for me because I know a lot of people that use written worksheets like Byron Katie's work and stuff. There's all kinds of methods for it. For me, I just try to hold at all times that I'm allowing whatever's happening in my consciousness to keep happening. That's not who I am. I'm allowing it to do whatever it needs to do, and it's not who I am. Something about that's a very subtle internal situation. It's nothing it's not like something I can really say for people to replicate quite yet. But the idea is that even if the weirdest, strangest thought in the world comes up, I allow it to be there, but I know that's not who I am, and that's what it does. Yeah.
So what you're saying is be that awareness, but don't allow the emotion or the thought to essentially take you down like a rabbit hole, basically.
Yes. Okay. And that's a continual process that it happens every single day of my life. If there was an AA type framework around it, it would be that I know I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. And that being the case, I'm going to have to continue doing the work. And that's okay. It is okay. It's okay. And it's okay for to recognize that most of the darkness inside of us is collective as well. Therefore, again, it's not who I am. However, if I deny the darkness, it'll get bigger.
Oh my God. Yeah.
How do I find a way to allow what's ever happening on the inside to simply be there without identifying with it as who I am? And there's a weird thing inside that will happen, and the transformation will start to happen in that sense. But it's not in trying to transform it either. Because if I'm trying to transform darkness, I'm subtly trying to get rid of it, which means I'm not accepting.
Yeah, because then at that point you're trying to control it, right? Whereas it's the allowance and the creation of space in order for it to heal, and just like I see you, I acknowledge that you're there. I cannot change you really. So I just accept, and
I try to do that on things that eventually I do change too, but I have to start with this isn't going to change. Yeah, that's not a death sentence either, because if something weird is so weird, because if you interpret never going to change solidly, then you might stick yourself in a place where you can't change. Yeah, right? So I do that. How do I allow everything happening inside of me to be exactly as it is without trying to change it or alter it, and also recognize that it's not me?
Yeah. Cool. I feel like I can have you on here for like 5 different episodes where we can like talk about different things.
I go down to have this be repeatable. I'm very much looking forward to the next one. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, okay. Well, we'll have to bring you back on then for sure. Thank
you so much for creating this space and this podcast, and I'm so curious and excited to see it developed.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's been an honor to have you here with me today. And it's just really nice to see your face again. It's been a long time. Cool. Mwah. All of the love sent your way, and to your little ones too. Oh my gosh. Okay. Be well. And we'll talk to you soon.